Isn't It Romantic Book Club and Abby's Dangerously Dark Darlings. We're in YouTube, we're in Casa Books, and I believe we're in Team Source Books. It's nice to see everyone. My name is Diana Muñoz Stewart. I write romantic suspense for The Strong of Heart. My book, Broken Promises, the first in the series, is out now. I'm going to do this, guys, because I have to play with this stuff. Because it's so much fun. Here's my in a banner and everything. Okay. So I'm happy to be here with Maria Vale and Angelina Lopez and Julianne Walker. And if you guys can introduce yourself, we'll start with Maria and just go around.
Hi, my name's Maria Vale, and the book over there with Angelina is my most recent book called Season of the Wolf. It's the fourth book in The Legend of All Wolves, which is it's about shifters who are first and foremost wolves, and it's about the big love for pack and land and for one's wild self. So that's my elevator pitch.
Nice. Julianne?
I am Julianne Walker, and I write romantic suspense, and my latest is Deeper Than the Ocean. I'm trying to figure out how this works. So up there with Diana, Deeper Than the Ocean. It's about former Navy SEALs who are treasure hunting for the most famous ghost galleon, a Spanish galleon that sunk in the 1600s. And the tagline is kind of like, you know, the Navy SEAL motto is the only easy day was yesterday. And they thought that they were done with that when they became civilians. But trouble keeps seeming to find them. So they are treasure hunting, but they still get to do some of their SEAL stuff. So, and you know, there's romance and ladies involved and all sorts of stuff. A rooster, a bulldog, all of the good things in life.
Nice.
I am Angelina M. Lopez. I write about strong women. Yes, up there with Maria. I write about strong women and the confident men who are lucky to fall in love with them. My latest release came out late May, and it is Serving Sin. It's the third book in the Filthy Rich series, which is about strong women who get what they want because they've earned it. Strong, wealthy women who get what they want because they've earned it. Serving Sin is about reluctant warrior prince bodyguard Roman shepherd who goes to Mexico to protect a Mexican heiress turned CEO who he rescued when she was 18. He comes back 13 years later to protect her, and in the course of protecting her, falls in love with her. So it's all about, you know, it's very over the top, super fun. All my books are pretty over the top, bonkers fun with lots of, she is a CEO heroine, billionaire heroine. He is a bodyguard, former Army Ranger, and a half prince as well, because of course. And, yeah, lots of fun, very steamy, a little bit of a romantic suspense element to it. And yeah, really great to be here with you three ladies today.
Wow, it's so great to have you guys here. So I'm going to be playing with these little things throughout the show, and please forgive me, but if anyone wants to ask a question, you are entered to win a gift card courtesy of Isn't It Romantic Book Club. So just ask a question, you'll be entered, and the winner will be chosen tonight before midnight. Anyway, so let's get right down to it with the tough questions, hard-hitting questions for you guys. Who is your favorite alpha heroine?
I can go first.
Go ahead.
So the author who turned me on to romantic suspense 20 years ago was Suzanne Brockman with her Troubleshooter series. And Alicia Locke is a female FBI agent, former sniper, and she is a woman of color. Like Suzanne was writing these really outside of the box heroines 20 years ago. Women of color, alpha females, and plus, I mean, her dialogue was great and everything else. But yeah, so definitely Alicia Locke from Suzanne Brockman's Troubleshooter series. And for anybody watching, if you like romantic suspense, I really consider her like the queen of romantic suspense. She started it all for me. So yeah, check her out.
Yeah. I don't know if I have one particular heroine, but Sherry Thomas really did an amazing job of showing me how to write really strong, intelligent, within themselves women who had a real sense of a goal outside of a man or a relationship or a romance, but women who really had a strong sense of themselves and what they wanted, and bringing in male heroines who would generally bend themselves around a heroine's wants, and yet were, wildly sexy, wildly powerful men who did not feel in any way devalued because they were with a strong heroine. Sherry did and continues to do an amazing job of writing alpha heroines. And one thing I really appreciate about the way Sherry does it is that they're always very, feminine. She takes womanly characteristics and makes sure to make those part of a person's strength, which I think sometimes more television and film, which is a lot of time written by men, but we take our really strong heroines and we just sometimes can make them like kind of prototypical dudes with boobs. And so I'm very opposed to that. I think what romance does well is recognizing all of the traits that we are prototypically feminine, again, that which can be anything, but really strength to what a woman is, what a woman brings to the table. I really appreciate that. I think Sherry that did an amazing job of showing me the way of writing those kind of books.
I'm going to go along with that and say I actually chose a shapeshifter, not surprisingly, but which is Selenka, and I've forgotten her last name, from Alpha Knight, Nalini Singh's. She's the alpha of the Black Edge pack. And she is, again, as you said, Angelina, both incredibly strong, would rip apart anyone who threatened her pack, and yet is also capable and shows the love she has for each and every member of the pack. And she lets the pups do, stupid things like, put stickers on her and things like that. But there is no doubt that she would tear your heart out if she needed to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's an important characteristic. Someone who's going to fight for, stick up for other people and stick up for their own. I think Karen Slaughter's Sarah Linton is great. I mean, she's just, the medical examiner, the doctor, and she's got all these caring and tender parts of her, but she is fierce and she is competent and she doesn't take, crap from anyone. So yeah, and I think that's really important. What do you guys think are some of the, characteristics that make a great alpha heroine?
I mean, I think this is really interesting. The difference of what we expect from alpha males is different. It tends to be just aggression. Whereas with alpha females, there is this sense of caring for your group, of being the wall between whatever is threatening on the outside and your people, your wolves, whoever on the inside. So I think there are not completely different expectations, but there are different expectations. For me, I think intelligence. You're saying 5. Okay, I'm not sure I can.
You don't have to do 5.
Yeah, I'm like 5.
This is all done today. I was messing around, guys. Sorry.
So intelligence, strength, caring, and self-sacrifice. So that's 4.
So do you have a character that exemplifies that for you?
In my own books, it would be Evie, who is, I think in all, I have 3 major alpha heroines. The one is the Ermonbur, who is the mythical founder of the wolves. And she fights with everything she has and loses against the gods because this is the mythos. This is a founding mythos. And then there's Elfrida, who brings the wolves from Mercia when it's become clear that they're not going to survive in England anymore. And she brings them to the Adirondacks and she fights everybody. She fights.
She's like the matriarch of the.
She's sort of the matriarch. She's the founder of the Adirondack Pack. And then Evie, who is the current alpha and who has to deal with the fact that they are now having to accept new people, humans, a different kind of shifter. It's a
right. Humans are so much trouble.
So she allows them all in because in her heart and in her mind, she sees this going forward. She is able, and I think this is what a good alpha would do, is not just aggression now, but what is to be gained in the future. And so I think
so for you, it's also leadership.
Right, exactly.
Okay, cool.
I teach a course on how to write alpha heroines just because it was something very important to me. And so I put together a workshop and have been evolving it as I've been doing it. But so I teach, one of the things is like 10 qualities of an alpha heroine. And the main thing I always say is that they center themselves in a room. It's the kind of the theoretical bit of it, but it's the idea that we as women, a lot of time, if you think of theoretically, women alone in a room, and as people come into the room, we as women a lot of times kind of push ourselves to the side to make room. And as we push ourselves to the side, we're like, do you need anything? Can I get you a glass of water? But we make room. We've been taught to make room for other people and to see and assess their needs. An alpha heroine centers herself in that room because only from the center can she see the full periphery. What does everyone else need based on her? She has to be centered. She has to be strengthened in a good place to be able to give, to be able to provide. And so kind of it's like this theoretical way, but like think about your alpha heroine being centered in the room, with being centered in the room and kind of like, okay, if I'm good here, then I can take care of everybody else to the best of my abilities. And say, like if mama's happy, everyone's happy. Like from that idea. But then from that, it's like alpha heroines always have a goal. That goal can change. And especially in romance, a lot of times it does, because of the way we have to manage conflict and everything. But it's that women, that they have a goal and that they're going for that goal. And because they have a goal and they're centered on that, they aren't really pushed around by other people's interpretations of them. They know who they are. They know what they want. So that's kind of a third characteristic. And then the fourth one is that they support other women. Just the way, and I kind of mentioned it, that alpha heroes aren't intimidated by alpha heroines because their strength is not defined by weakening other people. Same for an alpha heroine. Her strength isn't defined by viewing other people as lesser than. And that's one thing we have historically, we've not always done a great job in romance. That we've had like the evil ex, or we've had all the other women were sluts, and all the other ones were disposable before this one woman, where, I really try that an alpha heroine values the women around her, values and supports women. And it's a one good way for also your readership to root for your alpha heroines if they see her actively supporting the characters around her.
Yes. So I totally agree with everything Angelina just said. For me, I always think of my alpha heroines as being incredibly comfortable in their own skin. And that is not to say that, they may not think that their nose is too big or that their ears stick out too far or something like that, because we all have these things about it. But this is not the thing that defines them. Yeah. This may be a little quirk that they have, but they know what they want. They know what they like. I love a really snarky, really quick with the comeback heroine. I'm totally about dialogue. And going back to what Angelina says, I love really smart, really supportive, really female-driven dialogue between two female characters. And the readers love that too. We always, in romance, we talk a lot about the bromance, and I write that too, but the readers love when two strong female characters are together and they are riffing off of each other or supporting each other. They love that. Yeah, they love seeing two women supporting each other, or three women, or a group of women, whatever it may be. Readers really love to see strong women supporting other strong women. And you're absolutely right, Angelina. Romance used to be a little bit bad about that. It was the heroine she was jealous of somebody else, who was about to catch the hero's eye. There was always that sense of jealousy, or that's where the conflict used to come in a lot. Yeah. And I think we as authors are getting a lot better at straying away from that, making the conflict something else, not pitting women against each other.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more awareness of that now.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out to the authors here, if you look on the right side of your screen, you'll see this little comment section. So you can see people making comments, and you can reply if you see something you want to reply to. And I'll just, every once in a while, I'll go through and read something. So Michelle Diaz says, I like when an author has the female being timid, shy, helpless. I don't like, I'm sorry. Like, what? Why are you here? Men love women who are their equals and wish more authors would realize that. Totally agree. I completely agree with that. And see, are any of your characters based on personality traits of someone you know? So someone has asked. It says Facebook user. It doesn't give us an actual. Sorry about that. It will tell me your name in the group. So if you're worried about me not knowing who you are, I will in the group, but I just can't not hear for StreamYard. So are any of your characters based on personality traits of someone you know?
All of them. I wish that I was creative enough to like just come up with character traits out of the blue, but no, everyone who knows me knows that I'm going to pick something out about you and it's going to wind up in a book. I mean, that's just the way it works.
It's funny, I'm writing a book, I'm writing a series and now about 3 Mexican-American sisters. And that's the first time that I'm really drawing on my own family and my own background and really getting to reflect on how strong the women in my family were and my grandmother was. And essentially the grandmother that's showing up on my page, like, is my grandmother. Like, it's just my grandmother and she's passed. And so it's been like this lovely, before the taping started, we were talking about writing during the pandemic and that it's been kind of complicated, but I've spent started really focusing on it in February. I spent the last however many months it was like kind of like hanging out with my grandma and like how she would do things. And it's been really, really lovely. But I'm think it through and there are these little things, but this has been the most where I really am drawing upon lived experience and learned experience of kind of a strong heroine.
One of my characters, who's not the alpha, but she's the heroine of the second book, is based on my aunt, who was the first female ranger in Michigan.
Oh, wow.
And so this character is an environmental conservation officer and, kind of tough, no nonsense, not kind of laconic, doesn't say a lot. But I thought, that was like my aunt. I mean, yes, it goes on from there, but that's sort of where I went with that.
Can you guys hear my dogs barking? Do I need to get on?
They're lovely.
Yeah, it's not disturbing.
It's kind of hard not to use traits from people you know, because it's funny. Sometimes you don't recognize it till you get to the end of a book. So with my Black Ops Confidential series, in the first book, the matriarch, Mukta Parish, is a lot like my mother-in-law. She has a big family and she keeps, a lot of things together, and she's got, multiple degrees. And so, yeah, you do notice that sometimes after you're done, you notice, hey, okay.
Yeah, that's
I don't know. I didn't purposefully do that. Did you guys find yourselves, well, Maria, you just said you did, but.
Right. I mean, but I do think that there are always bits and pieces. The problem is I can't say that a whole person is based on another person, but there are bits. There are things that I have from friends that are, become part of a character, but the character as a whole generally.
Right. This is a totally side note, but it's just kind of a funny story. So my hero in Serving Sin, the latest book, his name is Roman. He showed up in the first book, my debut book, Lush Money, which I wrote. I wasn't published yet. I didn't know it was going to be published. And so when he pops on the page, I decided to name him Roman, which is my little brother's name. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And I write super sexy books. And so all of a sudden, I have a publishing contract and the book is published. And I realize that I did not change this guy's name, who I have a 3-book contract on, well, I'm going to have to write sex scenes about. So I'm calling him, and I'm calling my stepmom, and I'm apologizing, and I'm like, I can't change it now. It's out in the world. Don't do that. Any aspiring writer, these wise women would know better, but aspiring writers, like, don't name them after your sons or your brothers, because then you're just.
But it's a totally different person to you. Like, I've read books with, you know, my son's names.
Yeah.
And it's not the same person. I don't even, you know, it's totally different.
You write sex scenes with people who are named after your sons? That's
right. No.
I have characters who are named, you know, minor characters who are named after my kids.
No, nothing's happening to them. They're on a shelf somewhere.
That virgin question you have for later, like that, like no,
right.
Exactly.
I'll ask now. I wouldn't be a virgin.
I mean, I think absolutely, because it does. I can imagine an alpha who's okay. Again, I'm thinking of sort of pack dynamics, but who's completely taken up with doing what she has to do, which, you know, fighting the battles that she has to fight. And, you know, yes, they might be having flings, or they might just feel, you know, in this circumstance, it is not worth it to get into those kinds of complications right now. I don't have the time, because, you know, honestly, especially if you're like in a pack, there is no such thing as a fling. There's always going to be some kind of thing that goes on with that. There's some consequence.
Entanglement.
Right. And, you know, I can very much imagine a woman who's, I'm not going there right now.
She's not going to stay a virgin, though.
Right.
Well, because, right. When I think back about all of the characteristics that we were listing about what makes an alpha heroine alpha, none of those characteristics we listed were sexual experience.
Yeah.
You know, so
that's true.
I don't think that it matters. I think that you could totally have an alpha heroine who's a virgin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, a lot of times when again, I'm massively stereotyping here, but sometimes when you see, again, a lot of times in media, TV and movie, you see an alpha heroine. She is generally super sexually aggressive, and generally sexually aggressive with the male narrator who's been set up to be like, oh, women just love me. And so that, I definitely think, because it's about her decisions. She's made decisions, and she feels confident in those decisions as an alpha heroine, and that could be one of them. My heroine in Serving Sin, it was a sexual assault victim, and we learned this, and very content warning, and we learn this later in the book, but he rescued her from a kidnapping. She has gone, when we meet her again 13 years later, lots and lots of therapy, lots and lots of, and she's got resources, she's got wealth, she's CEO of her family's company, but she's like, this is the guy, and whether it's a teenage crush or whether it's because because it's incredibly, I admire him, but he's the guy I want to do this with, I'm ready now, and has to overcome his protective bodyguard instinct to say, I know you want to protect me, but I want us to be equals, and I want you to listen to my words, and I want to do this with you. If you're into it, I'm into it. Let's do this. And so it was an interesting dynamic, kind of playing with that bodyguard trope, the protective trope. But a woman who was like, I know what I want you to listen to my words. I don't want you to overcome what I'm saying with your need to protect me. So it was really interesting to play with that. But so for all intents and purposes, she was a virgin.
So how do you show, if your female character is, the head of the CEO of this company, how do you show her, her fighting? How do you show that without, she's obviously not going to pull out a pistol or, Maria's case, bite someone.
It is. It's funny because in all three books, they're all leaders in business or in wealth or they're trying to establish things. So but that being said, two of them did have fight experience. For my heroine, she just was into kickboxing. My heroine, my debut book, she was into kickboxing, but she was actually trained herself in Krav Maga after this experience and to be able to protect herself. And so it was actually something she did advocate, but we don't find out till later in the book, the actual experience of her being being a fighter was showing a female CEO in Mexico of a car company whose dad had been the boss. So
Wow.
she's of a company, an industry, country, the entire worldwide industry of automobile manufacturing, and confronting that over and over again and what that meant. And the bodyguard wanted to protect her, but so did her dad. And for her dad, protecting her was keeping her in an ivory tower. And so the fighting was overcoming all of these things over and over again. I'm getting feedback. Is anyone else hearing that?
I hear a little bit.
Okay, as long as it's not bothering you guys, then it's fine.
No, okay, all right. Yeah, sorry. There seems to be a little bit of issue with the live stream, but since Angelina brought up, what made her character strong, the premise that made her character strong. Maria, can you tell me how your character in your season of The Wolf shows herself to be worthy of being the alpha?
Well, except that in mine are, as I said, much more wolves than people. And so for them, there is actually a physical component to it. They will, if somebody, like in the first, the Elfrida who brings them over to Mercia, when the beta complains about something, she just uncoils, rushes for him and throws him out into this greasy stream in Portsmouth. And then commands her people to, drag him out, but they're very physical. They're very physical in their love, and they're very physical in their expression of dominance. So she will bite someone or bash them around if they're not. She also I have them having something called an alpha voice, which tends to sort of draw on a native feeling of obedience, a desire to be obedient. There's only so far you want to push your alpha when she's using that. So she's very tough about it. And in the first scene where you see her, somebody else, an outsider, comes in and does not recognize, thinks that the man in a white button-down shirt is the alpha because he looks most human, not realizing that the woman standing off to the side who's just listening and watching is in fact the alpha, until she turns around and everybody sort of clears away to give her space.
Julianne, can you think of a scene where one of your female characters showed herself to be pretty badass?
Well, I hope that I write a lot of badass women. So it's hard to think of one scene. I can think of two of my favorite female characters, and they're the ones that I get the most fan mail about. And I would tell you that it's not the CIA agent, it's not the FBI agent. The first one that I can think of is Becky Reichert from my BKI series, and she is a mechanic. And so that's a typically, male job, but she is, she's tiny, petite, blonde hair, and loves her femininity. Has sex toys and, just loves being a woman and all sorts of stuff. But she is in this completely male dominated field and surrounded by all of these former spec ops guys who, are like, undercover as a biker gang now. But anyway, so like, it's just incredibly male dominated everywhere. And yet she is right there with them. I mean, right there in the dialogue, being just as quippy as they are, being just as funny, not letting anybody tell her what to do. I don't think Becky ever grabs a gun. but you know, readers rave about her. They love her.
Yeah, I love her too.
What a badass she is.
She is.
And so I don't think that being alpha in the romantic suspense genre necessarily has to lend itself to the woman with the gun, the, you know, the CIA agent or the FBI agent or, you know, the helicopter pilot or whatever. I think it all comes down to, is she comfortable in her own skin, and can she hold her own in a room full of men? In a room full of men, is she the center of the room, just like Angelina said? And yeah, she is. And so, yeah, she's probably my number one. There are others sprinkled in there, but I definitely get the most fan mail about her.
Or can she, you know, assert herself?
Oh,
You know,
yeah, absolutely.
It's exactly what Angelina was saying. A lot of times what we're doing with our characters is we're showing the ways that we've been taught to be one way. And look here, this is someone who's different, while still honoring the feminine aspects of, you know, who we are.
Right.
How about for you, Diana? I mean, you write.
Well, you know, it's funny because I was just thinking about in my book, Broken Promises, my character, Felicity Shields, comes from, her mother is political. She's very strong, and the book opens with her mother being murdered, and it's just, the guy's a serial killer, and he puts out a list of women he wants to kill, and she's top of the list. Yeah, so the FBI comes to her and says, please, you know, don't have a funeral, don't do this, and that's like her moment. I think of her as her first moment of being strong, because her mother has always been there to be strong, and she's kind of been in the background. And she says, no, I'm doing this. I'm having the funeral. I'm doing the eulogy, and I'm going to go forward with this. You know, all sorts of havoc ensues from that decision. But she, you know, that was it. And it wasn't, she didn't have a gun. She just had words.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's interesting to me that a lot of the women we're describing have I have a heroine's journey that starts out with being protected, you know, protected by fathers, by bodyguards, by, you know, mothers, whoever, and then move on to find themselves as somebody who can stand aside from those protective figures. And I think that's, you know, that's part of sort of finding your alpha within you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, you know, that's actually one of the questions I had. Does a strong female character have to shed her femininity? Yeah. And it, you know, is it femininity or is it training? You know, when we're told to stand and take up the least amount of room.
Right. So Michelle Diaz is one of the made a comment. She says that I think this speaks to it. She says it's a shame in movies that an alpha woman is considered a B word. Yeah. When in reality, it's not that at all. Yeah. And I think that's exactly kind of what you were just getting at, is that confidence and standing up for yourself and advocating for yourself and saying what's on your mind. All of these things, men do it. And, I mean, and this is, we can get philosophical here, you know, but this is a societal problem that we're still dealing with, you know, just the gender gap and everything else. Those same characteristics, a woman does it. And unless we write her just right, there's going to be somebody who's going to be like, I hated her. She was such a B word.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? Because she advocated for herself, because she you know, spoke her mind. So
yeah, I have a number of people when I'm teaching this course that say I wrote a strong heroine and then I gave it to a beta reader and they said she was a bitch, and so therefore
unlikable.
And then I changed it, and I'm like, first of all, who is your beta reader? You know, like, and you need to suss out why. Why did they not like her? And if they said if they cannot give you, and I have this little list, I'm like, if there's some certain things here and there's some flags you need to look for, and if that's what then I advocate you sticking to your guns, because we are kind of I mean, there is a watershed moment, I think, happening in romance. I think there's a watershed moment happening in kind of gender dynamics right now. And, you know, I think romance, because we are so often talking about the woman's journey, and it is industry by women, predominantly for women, not all, you know, but that we do have some responsibility in being part of this conversation and how we want to do it. And so I'm really like, investigate when somebody says that before you go in and start changing it all, because we do need to do the responsibility. But in terms of kind of the femininity, like, you know, what defines what is feminine is so, you know, such a construct based on, like, you know, class and where you're from and where, you know, so many different things. And so, but it's like
a cultural construct, because what we here in the US consider feminine, you go to different countries and different cultures, and that's not considered feminine at all.
Yeah,
and the reverse is true. It's a cultural construct.
Yeah, it's completely cultural. But it's like, let's take those, whatever those characteristics are, whatever you've defined them as, like, this is what I think my character is as feminine or as a woman. It's like, let's make those characteristics part of what we consider strength. If she cries easily, I always say, like, you know, if your character cries easily, that means she's empathetic. And if she's in a position of power, we want those people to be empathetic, you know? If we had more empathetic billionaires, we'd be doing a heck of a lot better as a society. So let's make those characteristics part of her strength, instead of saying those characteristics are a weakness. You know, let's redefine all of that. So I just think we've got, you know, a certain responsibility to define how, you know, what makes a strong heroine. And I think feminine characteristics have to be part of what we are weaving into her strengths at all. And stop saying, like, oh, well, she's tough, therefore it's a masculine characteristic, and therefore it's better, you know?
Right.
I spent a lot of time thinking about this.
No, I think that's actually great. And I mean, I think it goes to the question of, can an alpha heroine be flawed? Can a strong female character be flawed? Because a lot of times that flaw, you know, if your character is too flawed, I think sometimes men are given the benefit of the doubt, like, oh, I know this guy's really a good guy, I can tell. But women are just written off, like, you know, she's just a B word, or, you know.
Right. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a bunch of men, none of whom had ever been told smile more. And you know, which is something that, more than almost anything else, I'd rather be called a bitch 100 times. Oh, I can't say that, can I? Than be told to smile more. And you know, I think that there are these sort of social constructs that with every step we take, we can address. And I also think that a part of it is changing the heroes. You know, there's now more cinnamon alphas, or whatever, the alpha role, right? So there are more men who are taking on these more caring roles.
Yes.
And I think that is a crucial corollary to having the strong alpha female, is having these men who love them as well.
That's a big responsibility, unwinding toxic masculinity at the same time that you're unwinding, you know, whatever characteristics of femininity have put baby in the corner, you know?
I think there's sometimes a resistance to it, that somehow that supportive man can't be sexy. And I just I fundamentally disagree with that, because I think that a man who is, again, strong enough not to be intimidated by strength around him, that's not his you know, that's not where his value system is. Comparing himself to other people is just relentlessly sexy. I think there's nothing more sexy than a confident man. I don't think you have to take away from one to give to the other.
So let me ask all of you, if I can ask a question. What is it that, how do you portray the sort of the man in the couple's strength? If you have an alpha female, how is the man portraying his strength? You know, what is it about him?
For me, it's really similar to the female strength. He needs to be super comfortable in his skin. He needs to be able to advocate for himself and stand up for himself, and appreciate that in the heroine and in the woman or the counterpart, whatever, his love interest in the story. To me, an alpha male is strong because he is not intimidated by others' strength.
That's good. Yeah. For me, in my first book, Black Ops Confidential, I Am Justice, the main character is kind of using the main heroine is using the main male character's peaceful operations outside of Syria to kind of go undercover. And when he discovers that, he has a choice: help her, or just like, forget you, you were using me. And I think his, matching her, like coming to her aid and being there for her and supporting her and her, quest was very important.
Right. His willingness to see that what she was doing was a moral thing. It may not have been his moral thing.
Right.
Exactly. But it was a moral thing.
Yeah, and I think I think the man, I really want the male to be goal-oriented as well. There's always a goal, again, whether that goal shifts and changes, but it gives them a track, it gives them a backbone of having this goal in mind, and watching them adjust and listen and, admire and do. And I get, Julian, you had mentioned, admiring, watching them admire the heroine and kind of having their worldview altered a little bit by the strength of this, I really, again, I find that just so sexy, and I find it so admirable, and I do find it strong. I do find that to be a strong characteristic, him being able to make it, and it not always being easy, but being able to show that adjustment, that change. I think one of the cheats I use to show that strength and alphaness is I write super hot books. I write 7 sex scene books, and so just quite honestly, the way he is in bed and the way. I won't say it, like I use it as a cheat. It allows me to show both strength and vulnerability in a way, because I get to just show.
That's a good point. I think that's definitely, that's definitely true. Your alpha cinnamon bun has to be, really confident and,
Well, that's the other thing, Diane, is I love when guys are incredibly competent. So even if they're not aggressive, to me, there's something incredibly alpha or sexy and strong about competence.
Absolutely.
I can eat that up anytime.
And devotion to the heroine and competence, I definitely agree. So for our female heroines, do you think their alpha heroines can have a posse, or are they just loners?
Like I said, I love the scenes that are written between 2 women in my books. So I absolutely think that an alpha female can have a posse.
Yeah.
I just like, as I was saying, what makes some of the great alpha males is that they're strong and they can appreciate and not be intimidated by the strength in others. Same for the women. Women who appreciate and are not intimidated by the strength of other women, they're amazing. Those are amazing scenes to write. I love writing those scenes.
In my I have these different roles, and in the current world, the beta is female, and the deemer, who is the sort of lawgiver of the pack, is also female. So these are people who, and the human behaviors teacher is also female. So these are the sort of group that the alpha depends on for advice. And I mean, I love that. I love that there are all these women around who are giving her this advice, and it's all for the greater good. So it's not like there's no competition there. There's just one goal.
And I love found family. I absolutely adore found family. And my second book in the whole series is about a made up Spanish kingdom in the mountains of Spain, and the kingdom is based on wine growing. So it's all vineyards and wine growing and It's awesome. But the second book is about Hate Crush, which is not up here. It's about the princess. And so, and the whole book is set in the kingdom. And so it's, you know, all of the people around her and the manager of her winery. And so that was all found family from the beginning. And I just loved being able to write all of those scenes of this community around her the whole time. I don't think, an alpha heroine, my first alpha heroine in Lush Money and the alpha heroine I'm writing now, one of their things that they're overcoming is loneliness, the sense of being very alone. But that's 2 heroines out of 4 books I've written. That is not inherent to, the kind of lone wolf I don't think is necessary for an alpha heroine.
Yeah, I think, so in my Black Ops Confidential, it was all about a secret society of female vigilantes.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
And they had the one guy. But
the token dude in the group.
Yes.
It was definitely a found family. It was definitely a wonderful found family, very tight and
yeah, I love that. I really love that whole world. And in the book I just finished, Broken Promises, the same thing. It's so the women on the list actually come together. Yeah, so this serial killer puts out this list of women he wants to kill, and these women actually come together and form, you know, a found family kind of thing.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So do our alpha heroines get to kick butt and kick back? Or, you know, if we show our alpha heroines kicking butt, do they also have to do something feminine? Like, and I know this is really stereotypical, but, you know, do their laundry or whatever.
I mean, no, not for me. I think that so I guess the question is, if we're showing them being ultra tough, do we feel an obligation or maybe pressure to show them being ultra feminine to sort of like even that out?
Right.
I never do. I mean, she might do something ultra feminine, but it's going to speak to her character and something she loves. I mean, maybe she crochets to come down, you know, from a mission or something like that. I could totally see that, but I mean, I have so many girlfriends who crochet for, you know, as stress relief. So that would just be something normal. I wouldn't feel an obligation to do that, I don't think. What about the rest of you ladies? Do you feel obligated to show her being ultra feminine after showing her being ultra tough?
One of my favorite scenes in Serving Sin is, she's like been a billionaire heroine her whole life, you know, just been super, super wealthy. And they end up having to escape to Kansas with her little brother and, you know, the bodyguard and her brother's protector. So they're like in this cabin, this really nice cabin in Kansas. And the bodyguard, who grew up in a trailer park in Texas, is like, look, I'd love to cook for all of y'all, you know, over the next week, but I don't want to cook for y'all over the next week. And so he teaches them how to make chili. And so in the course of this being together, this billionaire heroine and her billionaire little brother, like, learn to cook and do the dishes and, you know, all of that stuff. But it wasn't a moment. But what was funny about that, she hadn't done most of these things. She put things in microwave. She put the thing in the dishwasher, but like, you know, she didn't do that. And he reflects on that. Like, she didn't have to think about her groceries. She never would. But, you know, her being able to do these things now, you know, and the process was not him sitting down and teaching her. The process was, those chapters were about this family with all of this tension coming together, them making these moments of making this family together and getting to show him and all of his tenderness, all of his caretaking, you know. So I did those scenes, but they were never, she was like, how do I cut this jalapeno? You know, what do I do? And he's showing her how to do that. And those are those moments. And so it was kind of the opposite of that, where she was definitely not taking, he always took the lead in kind of this domestic role, just because it was more familiar, as just complete logic line would tell you. Right. He's familiar with it. She's not. And so, no, I don't think it's necessary. I like those slow down scenes regardless of what they're doing, only because I love seeing the underbellies of our heroes and heroines, you know. And
I love the idea of having the male lead be there to show her these things that she does not, I love that kind of switching the roles or what we've traditionally seen before. I think that's fantastic.
I had one scene in Season of the Wolf where the alpha is there to help with a sort of difficult medical procedure involving the hero's brother. And it was a very traumatic moment for him. And after he's had some sort of come down time from that, she asks him, "Are you hungry?" And they go and they have, they fix something to eat. But it's not there to contrast, but rather to give a quiet moment. It's really more of a plot thing than anything else. It's just to have a quiet moment when you're not having, because you can't just keep throwing rocks at your
yeah
and then to have them standing next to each other doing the dishes. He drives, she wants, I just find that kind of thing is a suggestion of intimacy and of calmness that's very and equality as well.
Yes.
Which I think is very is lovely. I like to read it.
Yeah, ditto to everything Maria said. That's exactly
me too.
That intimacy.
So Facebook user, sorry they don't show your name. Once you decide to start writing, how long did it take you to write your first book? Years.
Can I just say I'll go with that one because the first book published was the fourth book written. So there are 3 books that are in a drawer, in a metaphorical drawer. And then this one came out. It took 6 months, so it took less time. There's a kind of, I think there's a kind of glory to being able to write when you don't have a deadline, when you don't have anybody else's expectations. And I always tell people who don't have a contract yet, this is really great. This is
right. Yeah. Agreed. I'm similar to Maria. The first book that I got published, I wrote in about 6 months. And that's about as quickly as I can write a book. I mean, my books are long for a romance, so they're usually around like 100 and anywhere between 110 and like 120,000 words.
Wow.
And so they're long anyway, but they always say you're not supposed to compare yourself, but inevitably I do. And I'm always like mind boggled by these authors who can write 10,000 words a day. And I just think, my brain just doesn't work that quickly. I wish it did. My fingers don't work that quickly.
Yeah. No, 100% with Julianne. I am not a fast writer in any stretch of the word. Like I'm doing 2,000 words a day as I finish up the end of the first draft, so I can start revising before my October 1st deadline. And I'm like, wow, I'm hitting it. But my first book was 4 years. The book and then there was lots of books and half books and quarter books. And then the book that was published was 2 years. And now, I'm like, I about 7 months of like 7 months with like, then I send in my editor and then I get like notes back. And then I get it. We get on a call and then Carrie's like, okay, Angelina. And so I've got like a month of just solid wall-to-wall writing where I fixed it. I fix it every time and it's fine. But there's she loves me. Thank God she loves me.
What about you, Diana?
By that point? Are you sick of it by that point?
No, I'm not. I always recognize like, at that point I've had a break. And so when it gets it back, I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly how to fix it. And then I work on it. Like, I will write anywhere from 35 to 50,000 words in a month. Like, and it's no problem because they're all revision words. Like, it's weird. Luckily, give me time though. I'm sure I will get sick of it, but not yet.
Actually, my first book was a YA, and it was my 2015 Golden Heart Mind Traveler. I'm actually going to try and self-publish that because I love it so much. And we actually had, my agent and I had an offer to publish it, but my agent said, well, I think we can do better than the publisher who offered, but they offered. So we held it back, and meanwhile, I was working on my first Black Ops Confidential, and it was that book that hit. And I think it took me about 6 or 7 months to write, and I think it took, you know, maybe a half year more to get a contract and to get it out there and to get it. I got a free book contract on that. So yeah, it takes a while.
It does. Takes a while. Yeah.
So I'm just going back to now. I'm with Mind Traveler. I'm all YA now. Do you guys have a particular alpha heroine for YA that you think of as a YA person, as a YA character? Like Katniss Everdeen in The Hunger Games, or
you know, I think so many of the female characters are so tough in YA. I mean, I find YA actually much gorier than a lot of adult adult fantasy, because I read an enormous amount of adult fantasy. It's just not, you know, I still remember that scene in The Hunger Games where the wolves or whatever they are, the creatures come up and they've got the other candidates' eyes. You know, they've got the dead. I mean, I find them incredible.
Holly Black writes some of the best alpha heroines. The Cruel Prince, I think her name was Jude, but she was fantastic. She was just such a great character, and I think it's kind of someone forced into being their best self is what she presents us with, this character that doesn't really want to have to face this ordeal or whatever it is, and then kind of morphs into their best self to meet the challenge.
I have a 20 and a 23-year-old, and so as like I mean, just as the YA thing has happened, I've had children that age, and so people would recommend books, and I would try to read them, and I'm like I don't want to know their interior lives. Like I let them, their interior lives are their interior lives, and I don't want. Yeah, but it's been interesting. Like it's one avenue I haven't really.
You don't read YA.
I mean, fundamentally, at the end of the day, I write hot sex scenes because I enjoy reading them, and so I'm like, I don't want to don't close the door, and I also don't want to read my children. So yeah, so it's one I haven't really gotten into it, and I need it, but it's funny that you asked that question, because I've been twice now asked, how do these rules apply in YA, and I'm like, so I probably do if I'm going to keep teaching this course.
Yeah, well, now I'm going to have to send you a list of ones I think you will like. Julianne?
I am with Angelina. I don't read a lot of YA simply because my nieces and nephews are older now, but the youngest one is 16. And for many years, same, I have 13 nieces and nephews, and I would pick up a YA book and I'd be like, no. They are not thinking these things at 16 years old. So yeah, I haven't read. I can't speak on it because I haven't read a lot of it, but I need to. Now that they're all getting older, I feel like maybe I can take away those blinders and be like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah. I love the Holly Black books. I think she does a great job. There's a sort of wonderful Poppy Z. Bright vibe to my favorite is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
In Cold Town?
Coldest Girl in Cold Town, about a vampire, about a girl who's trying to not be a vampire.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And on the other end of the spectrum,
we're going to switch over me and Julianne. We're not going to just be like,
right.
Can't get enough.
On the other end of the spectrum, I have a friend who wrote a book, The Bar Harbor Retirement home for famous writers and their muses. Such a long title. And it has older people having sex. And one of the reviews she got was like, "Oh, yuck, older people having sex."
Like, yeah, I don't want to see my parents doing it. Yeah, I don't want to see my nieces and nephews or my parents. Like,
that's a great book.
Yeah, but once your kids are 24 or 25, then what do you do? I mean,
you guys, this has been so much fun. I really just enjoyed this so much. And thank you everyone for stopping by and for writing your comments. I'm going to have to end this like really quickly because if we go over 60 minutes, it's a pain in the butt for me to get it on Instagram. So bye everyone. Thanks for stopping by.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.